This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. The podcast features conversation for musicians of all types and genres, a curation of expertise intended to help all musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. Greetings, my lovely musician friends. This is Robonzo, aka Roberto. This episode of the Unstarving Musicians Podcast features my conversation with John Wolff, director, producer of the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival, which takes place annually in Boquete, Panama in Central America. John is also president of the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival Foundation. Given that this festival is known as the biggest little music festival in the world, I asked John for advice on gaining access to the World Festival circuit, but we also discuss the festival's history, some of the amazing talent that has performed the festival stage, bigger and better things in store for the festival, of course, relationships, and some of the reasons why being low maintenance and easygoing is the way to be in music. We cover a lot of ground in 1 hour, so get ready to take notes. Most important of all, enjoy this conversation with John Wolff. John Wolff, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time today. First of all, tell me if I have your title or titles right, or I don't know how official they are, but you are director and producer with the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival and also self-anointed chief bottle washer, I think I saw on Facebook.
That's right. That's right. I'm the director and the producer. Legally, I'm the president of both the foundation and the company. So legally, my title is president, but functionally, I am the director and the producer.
Okay. You know, and a few people that are listening will know that I moved to Panama in August of last year, which would be 2015, right? No, 2016. And I actually learned about the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival. I was about to say I learned about it when we moved here. That may not be true because my wife and I had visited in 2015, and it's quite possible that I had heard about it. But what I've learned since then is that because some close friends of mine had attended this year's festival, is that it's quite fun. The venue's wonderful, and I understand that you guys are kind of the biggest little festival around.
We are probably the biggest. Well, the Panama Jazz Festival is bigger than the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival. We are the number 3 tourist attraction in the Republic of Panama. We are the largest blues festival in Central America. And having said that, the amphitheater where we hold the festival only holds 800 people. So prior to this year, in other words, from when the festival started in 2007 till 2017, that was the upper limit of the attendance. But we have spectacular talent comes down because it's such a small, intimate little festival. We're moving this year because we've grown so much, we've had so many people want to attend, we're moving to a new venue that will hold up to 2,000 people, and we'll see how this works out for us.
For 2018?
For 2018.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. I was about to say that, 800 people, I know it's a lot of people, but by festival standards, it is
tiny.
Small. But
yeah.
To me, it's like an intimate crowd size to be in, and it sounds really nice. And I'm also sorry that I haven't attended yet because I'm not going to have an opportunity to attend in the venue, which I actually would like to talk a little bit about. I know you're leaving it, but so I understand it's actually in the Volcan area.
Well, in the volcano called Baru it's the highest point in Panama. It's, I think, 11,500 feet roughly. Not too far from Pikes Peak. One side of the volcano is known as Volcan Cerro Punta, and the other side of the volcano is Boquete. And Boquete is really famous for its coffee. It's got some of the best coffee in the world. It was at one time a very unique and very tiny little town dedicated solely to coffee. It was discovered, I think, about 2005 or so by the expats, and since then, the total population of Boquete is, I think, about 10,000 people, and about 5,000 of those people are expats.
And I have mixed feelings about that, but it is quite the hipster community out there. It's lovely.
It is.
It's lovely. For anyone who has not visited Panama, you'll certainly hear about Boquete as you start researching, and it's certainly a lovely place to visit. And if you are so inclined, possibly a nice place to live.
Yeah, there's a lot of music. I mean, most the people that have moved there tend to be very artistic. You see a lot of art and a lot of music. It's got a real artsy-fartsy feel to it, the town. Great food, great music. There's music almost every night. So, yeah, if that's what you like, it's a good place to go.
See, I need to hang out there more. It's I think I'm probably about 5 or 6 hours away, right? But
Right.
I need to hang out there a little more. And in Panama City as well. As you know, I'm in the sticks or in the jungle, as we say here in Panama. So not quite the density of artistic types. Tell me about the new venue.
Well, the venue, what we've done is we've moved. There's a fairgrounds in Boquete that it handles about 130,000 people every year for what they call it, the Flower and Coffee Festival. We are going to move to that venue. We're putting up a brand new state-of-the-art theater. It's a portable theater that has everything in it. And I'm from super VIP to general admission tickets. We've got it's shaded. It's got its own kitchens. It's got 3 kitchens and sound and lights and everything. It's portable. So that's what we're going to use this year. And in doing that, one of the problems that we had in Valle Escondido was the amphitheater was actually carved in out of the earth. And in order to get to the seating, you needed to be able to climb some very steep stairs. And that was a problem for some of the people that we had coming. It was not very friendly for the disabled. Anybody in a wheelchair or anybody that had a hard time walking, it was difficult for them. We've eliminated that problem this year.
Oh, well, that's definitely a plus side. I know a lot of people are going to enjoy that. Let's talk about the foundation. I didn't know much about this facet of the festival until after we spoke recently, but for those who aren't familiar with the festival or the foundation, please tell us about it.
Well, the festival is run exclusively by volunteers. Everybody, including myself, that works for the festival, we are non-paid volunteers. The proceeds from the festival go to the festival's Music in the Schools program, where we provide the local schools. There are 12 public schools and 2 private schools that we try to fund their music program. Our ability to do that depends on how well we did financially during the festival, which is only once a year. But we do support the schools throughout the year. We've got a couple of schools where we've completely provided them with instruments and drums and saxophones and clarinets and cables and music stands and everything that you can possibly think of. And we've also had workshops for the kids. We in 2016, Lee Oscar, Deanna Bogart, Mark L.A. Smith. Lee Oscar, by the way, is a famous harmonica player from the band War.
Okay.
He's now playing with Lowrider Band, which was basically the guys from War.
Yeah.
He provided a whole bunch of harmonicas for the kids. L.A. Smith provided a whole bunch of percussion instruments. Deanna Bogart came down with the stuff for the saxophones and whatnot, and we hold workshops for the kids. That's the purpose. That's where the money for the festival goes. The foundation was started, I think, in 2007, and I took it over 3 years ago, 2016. Let's see, is that right? 2015. We just try to do the best we can with the kids. So that's what we do. Now we've expanded that this year. We've got some people who are interested in art, and by that I mean visual art, painting and whatnot. Olga Sinclair, who is a world-famous artist in Panama, is going to do a class for about 200 grade school kids.
Nice.
Al Sprague is coming down. He's going to do some work with the kids on the art. We are going to continue the work with the music with the kids, and that's what we do.
And is that going to be at the event too, the classes and workshops?
Yes. On Sunday, will be Olga Sinclair. We'll do it about 9 o'clock in the morning with the kids, and we're hoping to get about 200 kids in there. On about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, we will have the band do a presentation, one of the bands from the schools we support. We will have workshops for the kids, which will probably take place before noon on Sunday. So Sunday is basically the day that we're working with the kids.
What's the official name of the foundation?
It's Fundación Boquete Jazz y Blues Festival.
Okay, cool. How did you find yourself in the role of president of the foundation, director, producer of the festival?
Well, the foundation was originally started by Antonio Singh in 2007, and it began with the Jazz festival, a very small jazz festival with local artists that was held in the BCP, which is the Boquete Community Players Theater. The theater holds about 80 people. Mm-hmm. And it was about a 4-hour thing on Sundays. And each year it got bigger and bigger until 2012 when Hans the Boozer took it over. Mm-hmm. Hans changed the format from jazz to jazz and blues and started bringing blues artists from all over the world. He brought the people from Switzerland, from the United States, from Canada, and it started to grow. That was the first year that I attended, was 2012, and I was so impressed that I volunteered. I volunteered I think the first year I played some music for them, and then I was a photographer, and then I was a driver. I would drive the musicians around and make sure that they got to the sound checks and to the meals and back from the jams and whatnot. And I continued to work with Hans until 2015 when Hans announced that he was going to retire. And then that's when I took it over.
Can you spell Hans's last name for me?
It's Lebuser, I believe. Let me double check that.
Close enough, probably. I know I can find him. He's in the archives for sure. I was hurriedly looking yesterday and I thought, well, since I have you. So I'm assuming we've talked a little bit informally a few months back maybe when I first met you, and I got the impression that your music tastes span beyond jazz and blues. Do you have a music background of your own? Are you a musician, or have you just been like an avid fan?
My father was a very accomplished violinist. My mother was a vocalist. My father had a record company and a recording studio in our house. Everybody in the family played musical instruments. My grandmother spent an awful lot of time with me, both on the piano, the guitar, and the violin. I worked at it very hard, but I lacked one thing, which was talent. I had no talent, which is critical if you're going to do this. And anybody, so you can have a love of music. And I ended up becoming a commercial airline pilot. And one of the sayings that we have in flying is that those that can do. Those that can't do, teach, and those that can't teach, administrate. As far as music goes, I administrate. Okay, that's where it comes from, a love of music, and I love all kinds of music. I'm not just strictly jazz and blues. I love world music. I spend a lot of time, like everybody else, in my youth with rock and roll. I appreciate music from all around the world, Africa, and particularly Cuba. Yeah, it depends on the day as to what I'm going to listen to.
What are you listening to this week?
It changes. As a matter of fact, one of the things that everybody's going to laugh is this week I found myself listening to Frank Sinatra and Mel Torme and Dean Martin and the old crooners.
Love those guys.
Yep.
That's great. So before we started recording, you asked me about my audience, and we discussed the fact that musicians from expanding genres is what I was trying to convey, and you had said certainly there would be some interest, I'm sure, among musicians in how to find their way onto a festival stage and some of the tips and mistakes. So why don't we talk about that a little bit? And I'm not really sure where to start, but I know that you can start us off it seems like there are so many things that one needs to know, but maybe, I guess, if you just kind of talk about some of the most important things that people need to understand if they want to find themselves on the stage of a festival of this magnitude or bigger, or any festival for that matter.
Well, the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival is kind of unique in that we are not, you had mentioned when you get to people, you've got 5,000, 10,000 people attending a festival. You have musicians that come in. You'll fly in on a Friday night. You perform on Saturday in the afternoon. You may leave Saturday afternoon, or you may leave Sunday morning, and there's really not a lot of interaction between the musicians themselves. But Boquete is a musicians' festival. Most everybody comes in on Wednesday and leaves on Monday. So there's an opportunity for musicians to be able to interact. We do a lot of jams. We're famous for our jams. And I particularly don't if you come in with a band, I do not hold you to playing a certain set, nor do I require you to play any of your more famous, accomplished songs. I'm willing to let you do whatever you want. And during the festival, it's not unusual to see various bands mix it up on stage. That's what the festival feeds on. So as a musician, you need to be able to be flexible in that way. You have to play well with others. You need to be able to come in, and for me, what I'm looking for is a musician who is willing to give up the stage, give up the limelight for a while and let somebody else step in, change things up, be very flexible in what you expect to have happen. And then that's really where as a musician you're going to shine, because you're going to be able to play with other really good musicians. And that's what the really good musicians that come to the festival feed off of. And as they're there, as they're leaving, or they're talking to me about next year, they will tell me who is another musician that has the ability to do that. We really don't want any prima donnas. If a musician that's going to show up and be very demanding, very inflexible, it's just too much fun to let that bring somebody in that way. So that's the first mistake that people do tend to make, especially new rising musicians. People who are just getting the limelight, they're the ones that tend to be the most needy.
Maybe perhaps feel like they've arrived and deserve it. How do you screen for that, for finding the right people, especially in the beginning? I'm guessing that your network of candidates has grown immensely in the short time that you've been running the festival. But when you were, if you can remember, starting from the beginning, how did you find the right people and avoid the wrong ones?
Well, I was very fortunate in that I've always had my finger on the pulse of music. And I have some very, very good friends who, one of them in particular was the president of the National Blues Foundation in Memphis. And this is a guy that I've been friends with forever. And so I would go visit him, and we would go to the Blues Music Awards and the induction into the Blues Hall of Fame and the IBC International Blues Challenge. And as you're there, you're watching the musicians, and you can see, it's just, this guy's fun, this guy's easy, and that's the guy you want to invite.
Can you also see that guy might be difficult?
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Can you also, by contrast, can you also kind of see people that, God, that guy or that gal's really good, but I'm not sure they're a good fit? Just
absolutely. And the thing is, musicians talk.
Mm-hmm.
They talk amongst themselves. You're a musician. You know who is difficult and who isn't. Mm-hmm. You played with them before. You've seen what they're like on stage, and that's what happens.
Yeah, that's funny. It's a recurring theme. I'm sure it's the nature of some of the questions I ask on the show, and certainly you can imagine it's a theme for a book about getting more paid gigs. It's a recurring theme among everyone I talk to, that reputation, being nice to people, and something that started to emerge a little bit more because you might know some of my friends, by the way, Laura Price and Kit Anderson, who are recent attendees, nominees, one of them a winner at the Blues Awards. When you mentioned sorry, I'm digressing.
No, go ahead. I know exactly where you're going. Go ahead.
Yeah, when you mentioned the National Blues Foundation of Memphis, I was wondering if it was the same, and then you said the Blues Music Awards. And so I've had these two folks that I just mentioned on the show, and at any rate, very recently, Laura Price specifically had talked about the Blues Music Awards being such an important networking opportunity. And then we also, of course, talked about the reality that many musicians are introverted, maybe downright awkward, not her words, mine, but, and have a tough time getting she said it's kind of funny to get a place full of musicians where they need to be networking because many of them have a hard time. But anyway, recurring themes. So it sounds like the finding these candidates has come very naturally for you because of, as you mentioned, your pulse on music and relationships of your own. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, I grew up with musicians. I grew up with a family of musicians and prominent musicians in the house. I've been around the music. I understand them. And I think that gives me a little bit of an edge in terms of dealing with them. I mean, what I do, and I don't have any problem saying this, I found Deanna Bogart and Lance Anderson, which are two very talented musicians who are also so easy to get along with. Deanna, every time I find myself in a position where you actually want to throttle somebody. And I just look over at Deanna, and she moves right in, and she's just got the nicest, calmest personality. I call her I have 3 Dalai Lamas. I call her one of my Dalai Lamas. She just comes in, and between her and Lance, they handle it very tactfully, very beautifully. But Deanna is my primary source of talent. Everybody that wants to come to the festival really needs to go through Deanna. People who try to circumvent that or try to write me directly to get on, I'm just going to turn around and forward the email to Deanna. And she knows everybody. She's played with everybody, and she's my first filter for who can come and who can't.
That's so cool. Do you know Kid Anderson and Laura Price by chance? Have you heard of them?
No, I sure don't. No.
After the show sometime, I should forward you their information. They're both lovely people, super talented in the blues and jazz areas, multi-talented folks. And I don't know that they're aware of the festival. They're located in San Jose, California, but I think they'd be fun to put on your radar for the future.
I'll be happy to talk to them. As a matter of fact, I'll just turn around and forward it to Deanna.
That's great. That's great. They're lovely people, and I think they'd be a nice fit. So actually, back to Deanna. Is she also one of the performers?
Yes. Both Deanna and Lance will perform. But their primary function, they're both executive producers of the festival. Deanna handles the artist requisition, and Lance is my production guy who, when your backline requirements and, I need this and I need that, and, the moving of the stages and the setting up and the rehearsals and all that, that's handled by sound checks. It's all handled by Lance.
So multi-talented, those two.
Yep.
That's really cool. Well, let's get back to talking about musicians who fantasize or trying to figure out how they can get. I've talked to musicians in San Jose and a little bit in the Dallas-Fort Worth area about festivals, and these are generally, they're probably pretty good size festivals, and they're generally like art, music, and wine festivals in the villages of the San Francisco Bay Area, which are kind of everywhere, the little cutesy downtown areas. So I don't know the attendance numbers, but they generally seem to be pretty sizable. So I'm sure that there are some things that they can borrow even from this international festival that is unique in a lot of ways. But, what are some other things that you think many musicians or bands kind of miss or struggle with that are just perhaps slight tweaks that they could make in their approach or methodologies for trying to get involved in something like this? Maybe it's in their own home area, or maybe they actually heard about your festival and want to come here someday.
Well, we have... I can even mention specifically Malamania, which it's a very interesting group of people there. Malamania is a sort of a Latin jazz band, Cuban song. They are out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, believe it or not. Instead of looking in Miami, instead of looking in New York, we found a Latin jazz Cuban song band in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But the way that we found them was one of the members came down in 2014. What we do is we hold open mics. In order to be able to get into a jam for one of our 4 or 5 jams that we have, you need to go to the open mic. And you need to be able to prove to the people that are there that you have some talent. Once you played at the open mic and you have talent, we will invite you to participate in a jam. And this one guy came over and he played, and he was fantastic. He was great. And he had that character. He was really easy to get along with. He was not selfish or greedy on the stage. He could play, he could support you, or he could take the lead. And he was so good that we invited him and his band to attend in 2015. And they're coming back now in 2017. They're really good, very good band. And that's the way that they managed to get in, coming from all the way from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And how did he find himself at the open mic?
I have
what is the guy's name from Malamania?
I have no idea what he was doing in Panama. I really don't.
That's funny.
Yeah,
and what was his name?
He just been vacationing, and he happened to hear about the festival and went there. But that's the way he did it. And he's not the only one. I've got other percussionists and whatnot. In particular, in Panama, we have amazing percussionists. I mean, we've got some, of course, it's just in the Latin blood. I laugh. We hold percussion workshops for the kids, And these kids come in and, you think you're looking at a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old kid and you're thinking, okay, we're going to start from ground zero. Well, that kid's good. I mean, it's just in the blood. Those kids can play. They're running around banging on tables all the time, beer cans and pots and anything else that they can get a hold of, and they play very well. So, we get a lot of really top-notch. One of our best percussionists that plays every year in the festival is actually a very successful, very prominent attorney in Panama. And, he doesn't do it for the money. He does it for the love of the music.
That's very cool. What was the guy's name from Alemania that attended the open mic?
Bobby J.
Bobby J. That's awesome. So that's so interesting. That was something I wasn't expecting to hear about this. So the open mic requirement, so if they show that they're talented, have the right personality, they get to be part of the jams that are happening. Now, the jams that you mentioned, are these the ones happening around and during the festival?
Yes.
Okay. And then subsequently, Bobby J's band you invited to the following year's festival to be in the official lineup on the main stage.
Correct.
That's cool.
There's another example of the same thing, and I think you probably, if you've ever you go to Coronado and you ever listen to Jim Botal's band, Scott Harper, who plays harmonica with Jim. The same thing happened. I saw him at Picasso's one night playing, and I invited him up to the festival, and we went to one of the open mics with Lee Oscar. Well, of course, I hope you know who Lee Oscar is. Lee Oscar is very famous, one of the most famous harmonica players in the history of the world, as my friend Tony Jones says. He plays with War. He plays with the Little Rider Band. He manufactures Lee Oscar harmonicas, very famous brand of harmonicas. Well, Scott went over there and played, and Lee was so impressed with him. We sat at Baru until about 3 o'clock in the morning talking harmonicas.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Yeah, and for Scott is great. Scott's a fantastic harmonica player, but I could just see the exchange, the energy that was going back and forth between the two of them. That's why I call it a musicians festival. That's why I think it's so much fun, because there's just there's an energy. The musicians find each other. It's an opportunity where everybody gets to play with everybody, and we open the stage. If you have the talent, if you have the ability, and you don't have to go through me at that point. We've got Lee has the ability to call anybody up on stage he wants, and that's what he did.
That's very cool. I mentioned Laura Price earlier, and we got on the topic of jams because when I moved to San Jose, California, after spending the better part of almost a couple decades, I guess, or a couple decades playing music in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I moved to San Jose and suddenly find myself looking for a whole new network of musicians, which didn't happen immediately. But one fateful evening, I walked into JJ's Blues Bar, which was at the time, this was in probably around 2001, 2000. Walked into JJ's Blues Bar at a friend's recommendation, and there was Laura Price running a jam band there. And we just got on the conversation about how important those are. So I bring it up because what an interesting twist here that, I'm asking you how musicians get into the festival, and this jam has been one of the other key things to discovering amazing talent for you. At that time, for me, Laura Price didn't know, and I tell her this every time I talk to her now, but she didn't know that she had sort of she inspired me because of my experience at her jam to reattend, get out there, meet some more musicians, and so then started my part-time, as it was, career in playing music in the San Jose area. But she was also maybe a year or less into meeting new people as well, and just talked about how many great people she met through doing that. And we talked about the importance for musicians in jams. And it's not something that has completely escaped me, but when I talked to Laura, now talking to you about what jams and open mic situations can mean for musicians, it is really maybe opening my eyes a little bit more to how huge they can be for musicians.
Well, from my perspective, this is really where I get an opportunity to see what you can do, and it's not just what you can do, whether or not you're talented as a musician, whether you know the chords and you know where the notes are. It's more, how do you interact with other musicians? Doing music is like making love, and it's not a one-man thing.
You are correct in that. It's funny, all these years I haven't really thought about it that way, but certainly there are other relationship aspects of music and bands and things analogies I've used over the years, but certainly it is comparable in that if you're doing it right, you
right.
literally, you escape from everything. You don't think of anything other than the moment of what you're doing.
And when the musicians get carried away doing that, and that's again that's the thing about the festival. When the musicians begin to interact that way, when the musicians get up and they start interacting with each other, where they are having fun, where they're totally involved, the audience gets involved. Okay, the audience picks up on that, and that's what makes a very successful festival. I feel sorry for the Stones. I mean, they make a lot of money, but how many times can you play I Can't Get No Satisfaction? It's like, they've been playing it for 50 years?
It is surprising in ways. By the way, I'm a gigantic Rolling Stones fan, but it is amazing that they have continued to do it, and I know it's all about their commercial touring product, but I guess they get their outlet occasionally by doing these small shows with different people.
Absolutely.
And they recently released an album of blues covers, which I'm like, okay, that's good they did that. I think that was something they needed to do.
Well, but Mick, this year we had Joe Louis Walker and Deanna Bogart, and Joe Louis's band at the festival. They had just left Mystique, the island of Mystique, for the Mystique Blues Festival, where Mick participated. And, it's a different story when they're able to get down there and just play music. And nobody hears it. Nobody knows about Mystique. Nobody knows about the island. Nobody knows about the festival. It's a tiny little thing. I think it's even by invitation only, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds cool. Where is it?
It's an island in the southeastern Caribbean. I think it's almost privately owned. I know that Mick Jagger is the one. You could Google it and get better information than what I'm going to give you. I just know that we had Cornell and Deanna and Joe Louis Walker, and about 4 or 5 of the musicians that played at the festival had just left Mystique.
Oh, that's cool. That sounds really neat. By the way, as we started talking about the foundation and the festival and being a musician's festival, are you familiar with, and don't laugh if it's a case where you feel that everyone in the world knows about it, but the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival in San Francisco?
No, I'm not.
So it happens I believe it's still happening in Golden Gate Park, but they apparently, I've not attended yet, I'm embarrassed to say, but they apparently have, I don't know that it's a nonprofit or anything, but they have this musicians festival environment going on. You after every year, anytime I read about it, I read about all the musicians, many of them big names, hanging out together, and that they just love going because of what you guys are promoting at your festival, where the musicians are invited for the entire time. They're invited to, or welcome to, exercise their artistic freedom. But anyway, just curious. I wonder now, after speaking with you about the Boquete Festival, if they have any similar nonprofit motives. I have no idea. But there's an artist that, actually, before that, I noted the festival includes, or has included recently at least, a New Orleans-style street parade. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, that was done originally by Hans, and it was part of what he did. We've tried to reproduce it, and every year that we've done it, it's become a little less successful. So we're actually eliminating it this year. We're not going to do it in 2018. Instead, we're going to have a street party. We're actually closing off a block of the main road in Boquete. We're going to have 5 different local bands playing in 5 different bars and restaurants. They're suspending the open container law for us so that you'll be able to walk back and forth between one venue and the other with an open container. We're going to do that in trying to make it like Bourbon Street, basically. But we're doing that instead of the parade. The parade grew until it was not manageable. It started off originally with some golf carts, about, a dozen or so, and everybody dressed up in costumes. And they would go around the park once and go to the Panama Hotel, where we would have the garden party. And then Panama imposed on us a requirement for doing a folkloric dancing. And we wanted to give the kids an opportunity, those kids who had been studying music that we have been funding, an opportunity to show what they'd learned. So what we did was we started the parade. The parade would end in the Central Park. We would have an exhibition of the folkloric dancing, and we would have the kids play, and then we would have the bands play. And then it got bigger. Then we got the fire department got involved, and the police department got involved with their marching band, and then the kids got involved with the marching band, and then the horses got involved. And
got out of hand, didn't it?
It was not manageable. We weren't, we had the people come and do a dog exhibition. It was out of control. And so we've decided that we're not going to do that again. We tied up traffic in the middle of town for too long. And then people did have a tendency to go to the bars, and they would get a drink and come over to want to watch the show. And there is not an open container. You cannot have an open container publicly in Boquete. So it was causing problems for us. So we've decided to eliminate it.
Well, I think the street party concept with a similar theme is going to be very nice.
I think so too.
It'll be really nice. I was just curious, and I was like, well, the festival is around the Mardi Gras time frame. Is that right?
No. As a matter of fact, I make sure that it's not, because Mardi Gras coincides with Carnival here in Panama.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you've been out in the streets at all during Carnival, you don't want to be out in the streets during Carnival.
I managed to miss the whole thing. We went, my wife and I, to Argentina, and we were in Buenos Aires, but we went to Mendoza.
Beautiful.
And it's quiet there during Carnival. They're not really into it. And then we returned when Buenos Aires after it was over. It wasn't intentional, but that's just the way it worked out. So we missed all the madness, which sounds like it may have been a good thing.
I generally, I have a 10 hectare farm, except it's not a farm. It's just a 10 hectare beautiful piece of land. And I buy enough food and whatnot, lock the gate, and I don't go out during Carnival.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say this.
There's just a lot of people that are drinking on the roads, and the traffic isn't, it'll take me an hour to get to Coronado from here, which is usually a 10-minute drive. So yeah, I don't go out. I stay home.
John, do musicians typically donate their time for this, or are you paying for some,
No.
not for others, or are you paying for everyone?
No. One of the things there, I'm getting back to my buddy Jay Seelman, who was the president of the National Blues Foundation. One of the agreements that he and I made when I started doing this was that he would help me as long as I made sure that the musicians were well paid for their work. This business of, trying to talk musicians into playing for free, or, come on over and, we'll be great exposure for you and this, that, and the other thing. We don't do that. Mm-hmm. I get musicians, many very good musicians, that'll come for a fraction of what they normally charge. But that's just a desire to participate. I pay them what I can afford.
Right.
But,
well, that's cool. I'm all about musicians getting paid, so I just didn't know, and I know that with the motive of the festival, but that's great.
And I will say, it's not that the musicians don't donate. Like I said, Lee Oscar came down with a whole parcel full of harmonicas, and LA came down with a whole bunch of bongos and other percussion instruments, and Deanna comes with all kinds of stuff, and they donate their time for the kids' workshop. But when they perform, I pay them.
That's cool. Well, and frankly, a lot of them just couldn't do it. I mean, it's a lot of great musicians are getting by, from that, and yeah, I think it's a good thing.
And, there's an advantage that I have in that it's not festival season. February, it's 20 degrees below in Canada and up U.S., and it's not festival time. So you get a lot of musicians that are sitting around and would just love to get out of the frozen north, come to Panama and, make a little money and have fun.
And I can imagine it must just be a huge blast for them to be in Boquete because it's such a beautiful area, and I'm sure that the new venue is going to really up your game as far as making it fun for the musicians. So imagine that's going to be great. There is I'm going to take us on another sidetrack here, but was scanning some of the recent performers, and there was a guy that really caught my ear, and Matt Scofield.
Oh, man, Matt's amazing.
Yeah. How'd you find him? And tell me anything you want to tell me about him.
Well, we're back to Deanna. Mm-hmm. Matt and Deanna are very good friends. And Matt, interestingly enough, is out of Miami. So everybody assumes that because you're out of Miami, it's going to be a lot less expensive for us to bring you down for the festival. That's not true. I can bring you from London for cheaper than that time of year I can get you out of Miami. I think last year, the bands that we had coming out of Miami was like $1,300 round trip. I could bring you out of LA for $450. It was ridiculous. But Deanna was the one that hooked us up with Matt. I believe Matt is a Hall of Famer in the UK. He is an amazing musician and now in Miami. And I hope to get Matt back, if not this year, next.
Yeah, I just caught some quick video, and took me down the YouTube rabbit hole for a few minutes, but Yeah, he was impressive. And I didn't realize he was based in Miami currently. I gathered quickly he was originally from the UK.
No, he's got a three-piece in Miami right now.
Yeah, what a gem that guy is. I hope he's doing well.
Yep. The other artist that we haven't mentioned is another guy that goes basically unrecognized is Scott Ambush. Scott's amazing. Scott is just absolutely amazing talent. Scott is a bass player. He plays, another good friend of Deanna's, plays bass with Spirogyra. And when we formed a band, we actually put a band together, not 2017, but 2016. And it was Scott, Deanna, Mike Alden. With the rhythm section was Scott and Mike. I think Deanna was on the saxophone. Lance may have been playing the keyboard. It was amazing. They were great.
To check him out. Spirogyra is a band whose name is very familiar to me. I've not personally delved into their archives, but looks like at least they've been a recent favorite, at least in part, if not as an entire band at the festival, which is cool. Well,
it's because of Scott. As a matter of fact, Spirogyra is a band that I could not afford. And these guys are just so well-known and so famous. But this is Scott's fourth year coming to the festival. And the band, basically, Scott's talked so much about the festival that the band has basically said, hey, what can you pay us? And, we'll come. So we've got, this first-rate music. So the band basically agreed to come at a fraction of what their normal fee is. And the same thing happened with Otis Taylor, by the way. Ann Harris plays with Otis. And Ann had been coming as an artist at large, and I couldn't afford Otis. And Otis wanted to come so badly that he said, make me an offer. What can you pay me?
What's the lure for when somebody like Scott goes to the band and says, hey, we should do this? How does that conversation typically go? How does he get them excited?
I wish I knew. I mean, I wish I was a little bird on the wall when he was sitting there talking. And I wish I was a little bird on the wall when I see, I get a lot of artists and bands that want to come to Panama. And I don't know what the story is, other than the fact that musicians come and have a really good time. And they go back and they talk about Panama. And they talk about how much fun they had and how much fun it is to be here.
Yeah, and I guess if they learn anything about Boquete, which is fairly easy to do, that I'm sure it just looks fun on the surface before they even realize how fun it's going to be. So you have a new venue. Maybe nothing else is changing this year, but beside everything that's driven by the venue, the street parade.
That's not true.
Well, I wanted to ask, what are the big plans for the festival moving forward?
Well, as a matter of fact, we're going to put out a newsletter on Saturday. We're going to address many of the things that are changing. We are changing the garden party. We're going to a different venue. We're changing where the festival is. We're going to a different venue. We are adding art, visual art, paintings and whatnot. Maria Rivas, who's a very talented artist, is going to participate. Al Sprague, Olga Sinclair. I wanted very much to add food, gourmet food, but I think I've made enough changes this year that if everything works this year, maybe next year I'll be able to add the food. I would love to get the wine involved, and that may happen, but I've got to speak to the liquor people here, the liquor distributor, wine distributors here. They're the ones that would make that happen. Boquete is famous for its coffee, world famous coffee, where some of the best coffee in the world is out of Boquete. We're going to have coffee at the festival. So I'm changing it really from a strictly music to music and arts.
That's great.
Coffee and wine. So it's going to be a little more like what you had alluded to earlier, where you get, in Northern California, you get these small towns that do this music and art and food and wine. And that's what I'm going to try to do. Yeah, and the other thing that we're doing, the other thing that we're doing is I have made arrangements with the tour companies, whitewater rafting, zip lining, trips to the top of Baru. And we're going to have those events hosted by festival artists. So you'll be able to go whitewater rafting with Dwayne Dupsy or zip lining with Deanna Bogart.
That's great. That is great. I think that's going to be a big draw. We're getting kind of close to the hour. There are a couple things I need to ask you or clarify for listeners. First of all, if they want to learn more about the festival, let's see if I have a couple things right. So there's BoqueteJazzandBluesFestival.com.
Correct.
And Boquete, for those of you who are just learning about it today, is B like boy, O-Q-U-E-T-E. And then there's also a Facebook group and a Facebook page. The page is the one I took note of, which is Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival. And then on Twitter, you guys are at BJBF1, as in blues.
Boy, you know,
Jazz Blues
I'm
Festival.
not taking advantage. I don't tweet, so I don't know anything about Twitter, and I don't know anything about Instagram. That shows you where I am. I do need people that are going to do that for me. I haven't done that yet, so.
I think that, let's see, I'm kind of curious here. I'm going to look really quick, but I think that certainly Instagram would be a big thing for you guys, but let me see what's going on your Twitter account just for your, May, so it's been a little while, and there was some, yeah, it's been a little while, but yeah, I think they would both be great for you guys, and I'm sure that somebody listening is probably going to reach out and say, hey, I'll help you.
I hope so.
So, yeah, Instagram would be great. So I take it the website, and they can find all the things about your newsletter there, and the Facebook page and groups there. Is there anywhere else that people could find out about that they should know about?
Not really, not that I know of. We're going to be doing, of course, newspaper, television, radio advertising here, and we will be doing some advertising for certain festival programs. For example, the Blues Bender out of Las Vegas, we'll have an advertisement in their program. And then the legendary Rhythm and Blues Cruises, we'll try to talk to them and see if they'll let us do some advertising. They may or may not. I know that Jeff Alexander, one of the partners with Legendary Rhythm and Blues Cruise, came last year and had a ball, had a great time.
Yeah, I've heard about this. I have some friends in San Jose who I'm pretty sure have been on that, and they speak highly of it, so that sounds great. Yeah, I forgot. I did notice that over the years you've had a lot of what I'll just call, traditional media coverage as well. Has some of that come to you, and some of it been sought out by yourself and Deanna and the rest of your team?
We do pay for some advertising, but not much. Most of the stuff that we do is word of mouth and Facebook. And as I said, we only had 800 seats.
Yeah.
So our advertising, that doesn't make much sense to invest a lot of money in advertising when we basically fill up anyway.
Yeah, the friends here from El Valle who went and have been before just couldn't say enough great things about how much fun they had, and a couple of those folks are acquainted with you, and it was a good fortune that I got to meet you and have this conversation today. Really appreciate it. There's other stuff I'd love to talk about. We can either do in a follow-up podcast interview or offline anytime.
One of the people you may want to talk to, and I'm sure I can arrange it, is you can talk to Deanna Bogart, who is, I keep referring back to her. She's just an amazing talent, a great personality. She's, like I said, she's one of my Dalai Lamas.
I will. Yes, we have mentioned her a few times. I will follow up with her. I'll send you those couple of names as well. Laura Price and Kit Anderson's contact details in case you folks want to reach out to them or just go see them online and see what they're up to. John, it's been great. Thank you again for your time. I'm so glad that I was introduced to you, and I'm looking forward to watching and attending some of the festivities for the next festival.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Hey, this is Robonzo. Thanks so much for listening. Did you know I'm also an author? Check out my book, The Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, How to Get Booked and Paid What You're Worth Over and Over Again, available on Amazon. And the book is also available in audio format as The Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. Check it out wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Last but not least, are you a gigging musician, recording artist, songwriter, or touring professional? Perhaps struggling to get your music out to the world? Struggling to get the gigs you want? Pop over to unstarvingmusician.com and sign up for my email list. I'll send you an occasional email with tips, expert advice, music, musician resources, and anything else I come across that might make your journey better and brighter. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.